see it's getting darker and darker, and there's just no way right now for these drivers to know exactly what's going to happen.
These guys are going to have to be really, really careful and tiptoe around the track until it's either stopped.
Not even 10 minutes into this race, and I feel like we've got enough strategy going on for a whole event, but still a long, long way to go.
There's Yellowstone, there's Yosemite, but for racing fans and for Grid Life's Elkhart Classic, the destination is Road America, the National Park of Speed. Free ride in the front of the field here. Look at Emil Tab up the inside for the race lead. We head down to the first corner.
And these guys have no idea what they're coming into. Look at this field. They're 2 wide, 3 wide, a couple places slipping.
Side by side for the race lead, 54, 48 through 3 and 4, working lap number 60, 110 laps to go. Yusuf Ghali, power move to the bottom of the racetrack, making the short way work. They're going to touch down the hill.
This will be a great run for Fuller here.
Yeah, typically we'll ran off the track in the final quarter of that lap Fuller to get a massive.
Here he comes.
Does he have a look?
Oh, big block here by Sanfilippo. Into the grass goes Ben Fuller toward turn 1, and Sanfilippo hangs on. He's loose. No! And he crashes hard in the exit of turn number 2. Don't try here, boys. They're going to do it. Briscoe backs out. They touch. They're going to crash. Briscoe going to slam the attenuator hard into the wall, and Sarah Tesson hits him as well. And big damage on these cars. That's huge.
Number 4, people are struggling for grip, going out of every single lane, even trying to then run. It's getting really insane.
Powered by AWS for the Intercontinental GT Challenge, powered by Pirelli at the Indianapolis 8-hour. We are 7 hours and 18 minutes into this 8-hour event.
John Miller way deep on the brakes to the inside of turn number 1 and 2. The spin, the 3 car gets turned around in front of the car.
James Houghton looking for a place to go, but he's got Austin Cobb to the inside. A bit of a gap behind. I think that's about 15 or 16 spot as they come out of turn 3. Big slide for them.
Getting a run. He's got it. Going to be a drag racing line. Final corner. Checkered flag waving. Here they come. At Virginia National Raceway. To the line. Thompson, Darling, door to door. Banging doors. Fender to fender. I can't believe what we just saw.
The desert can be a cruel, unforgiving place. Stifling heat, nearly unbearable sunshine, and not a drop to drink for miles. After a trip to the Florida wetlands last week just outside of Miami, Avondale, Arizona will feel like a trip to hell for those with a thirst for victory, especially when the only driver to quench that thirst so far this year is Christopher Demeritt. For these sim racing drivers, the next stop on the schedule is Phoenix Raceway. When the lights come on and the stars come out, the heat of the desert will vanish with one cool driver coming out on top after 150 miles of racing. This is the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series and the Indycar1909 150. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Tom O'Gorman tonight for the second round of the 2021 Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series. Tom, last week it was Homestead, Miami, where we contested our first race of the year. Now we head to Phoenix for race number 2, a 1-mile short track.
And you can see from the overhead shot, it's a totally different shape for the race this week. A much different challenge here at Phoenix than it was last week at Homestead, with a couple of different things to discuss a little bit later on. But coming off that first win, Chris Demeritt, he's set himself early as the guy to beat this year.
Again, this is the Indycar1909 150 on Indycar1909.com. You can find news articles about IndyCar as well as post-race summaries for the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series. Proud to have them on board with us here this week. Again, my name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Tom O'Gorman. 150 laps of racing here tonight with the sun setting at Phoenix Raceway. This 1-mile short track intermediate, sort of in between. Of course, it's relatively recently repaved as of 2011, so it's going to be a high grip surface. That means high speeds down there on the racetrack, and the weather tonight is absolutely gorgeous. 78 in the air, 83 on the racetrack. Qualifying already completed earlier in the evening, and now it's time to head towards our race here in just a few minutes. We've got 34 drivers lined up for the start, and last week's winner, Christopher Demeritt, has been quick in practice all night long. In that 144 car, Tom, last week at Homestead, he proved that he was the best on strategy, but it might not be strategy that wins this race tonight.
Well, it was almost heartbreak. He actually botched his pit stop and had to take a quick audible, an extra pit lane trip, and made it work for him in a fuel-saving stint for the record books, and brought it home in P1. Second place, Adam Blocker was absolutely the fastest car on track. I think if it came down to just a raw pace race, that second place finisher, Adam Blocker, would have won last week. He sits third in practice right now, and interestingly, our third place finisher from last week, Andreas Eich, sits fourth in practice, with last year's champion, Philip Kraus, leading practice right now.
So the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series has fantasy drafts that I've finally decided to participate in, and Philip Kraus is one of my picks for tonight. He was one of the more expensive drivers on that list. Andreas Eich and Brendan Lichter were my other two expensive picks. The reason why I chose these guys, Tom, because I did this series last year, and I know that Lichtenberg especially is very, very good at these short oval type racetracks. Again, we're running the different wing and aero configuration on these cars this week. Last week we had the Speedway configuration, very low slung rear wing and a very minimal front spoiler. Now it's the big stuff. This is what we run on the road courses, so a little bit more downforce, but that is going to make that aero wash even worse than it was last week. It'll be a huge discussion all night long.
Well, and it makes the car stand out so much more, in my opinion, that big rear wing on the back. And last week, one of the big conversations was how many wickers you run on the front wing at the low downforce, high-speed Speedway setup. And we were keeping track of which driver had how many of those wickers on the front. This week, it's a totally different approach to the setup, so there's a new challenge with that. The other driver to keep an eye on last time we visited Phoenix was Andrew Kinsella, who's here tonight again, and he sits, I think, just outside the top 10 in qualifying, 14th right now in, ironically, the 14 car.
And we did qualifying here earlier in the evening to kind of sort out our field. At the beginning of Homestead last week, there was a bunch of chaos in the second lap of the race. We had a big crash down in turn number 1. It took out a handful of our contenders, Tom. This week, I'm not expecting a similar situation, but I will expect a lot more small accidents through the start of the race until we kind of whittle down the field. 34 cars is a lot of cars to have here at Phoenix, especially when we're doing laps in 19 seconds.
Yeah, and you can see from the overhead shots, there's just a lot less room, and I agree that we'll probably see fewer big pileups just because we're not going nearly as fast. And last week it was really minimizing the amount of drag on the car. I think we saw a lot of super low downforce setups, which made the cars really hard to save as soon as they started to walk at all or slide at all. And this week, with that higher downforce setup, maybe the cars will be a little easier to control. But again, there's just less room when things go wrong.
So we'll go over our keys to the race here in just a minute, but last week we saw the Aero push being a big factor in who won that race, and it ultimately was strategy that won the race last week, getting ahead of drivers and not allowing them to pass you because you either short pit or you pit later in the stint. But for Christopher Demeritt, it was saving fuel and getting out ahead of his competitors. Tonight, this racetrack is wide. It's extremely wide. At one of the points down here at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see this dogleg portion here. This you're allowed to cut in qualifying, but will be disallowed for the race. You'll have to stay above the yellow line. There are admins watching. So the racing surface looks very wide, Tom, but this is going to be extraordinarily narrow once you factor out that entire backstretch area being unusable.
Sure, and that's where the Aero push is going to come in as well. That wall is going to come up quick on the right side, so that's kind of 2 of the 3 race points to watch for, both the Aero push and that course cut on what is, I guess, Speedway Turn 2, but also the claustrophobia that we mentioned. It's important to keep eyes up even further than last week because there's just less room to play.
So 150 laps, 150 miles for the IndyCar 1909 150 here at Phoenix Raceway. And looks like we're going to actually be working into our qualifying session here. So we've whittled down the field to 34, and now it's time to qualify here, Tom. So as we get on the racetrack, A.J. Musselman in the 54 is out on track. Chris Stouffer, a lot of people picked him in the fantasy this week. He was very fast last week at Homestead. Didn't get the job done, though. Ended up in a collision at the exit of turn number 4. So there was a lot of treacherous conditions here. But with qualifying underway, fastest lap time takes the pole position, and we'll start flying around here. Look at the speeds we're carrying, 175 through the middle of turns 1 and 2. And again, qualifying trim, you're going to be trimming this car all the way out. You can cut that bottom area on this qualifying session, but not in the race.
And I do wonder if there's a qualifying setup that allows for you to cut that without bottoming the car out, and a different race setup that doesn't have to factor in for bottoming out. But Stouffer, one of the many Power Slide team cars here, Power Slide last year's team champions, but right now it's Team I5G that sits on the top of that team championship board.
Well, here's a driver that we should keep our eyes on. Wilson Nito in the number 80 was our pole sitter at Homestead. He was crashed on lap number 2 and finished with the chassis of that car basically in pieces in the pit lane. It worries me for the competitors that he's already sitting second. We've only had a couple drivers lay down times, but I'll bet you that he stays up towards the front here in qualifying. Adam Blocker almost won the race last week, was by far the most dominant driver, past champion of this series. He's working his way out onto the racetrack as well. And a lot of drivers pulling over and resetting, trying to get themselves the best possible run at a pole position here. Here's Christopher Demeritt, last week's winner, out of turn 4 to start a flying lap.
Paint you a little picture from last week to give some context. Again, Wilson Nito was the pole sitter, but I think a lot of the field was either either caught off guard or potentially just, you know, a lot of excitement coming into that first race. And we had some really dramatic drafting battles on that first lap and a quarter, which resulted in a massive accident entering Speedway 1 on the start of the second lap. And that took out Wilson Nito and about a dozen other cars actually at the beginning of the race. So like you said, he's an incredibly quick car, but had some really unfortunate luck last week. So he's going to need a rebound. Check that out. Demeritt goes to the top by 0.08 of a second over Kinsella. Again, keep an eye on Kinsella. He's the defending winner of this race.
Brian Carey up to third, Adam Dock in fourth. Wilson Nito drops to seventh. Adam Blocker working his way across the line. 21.608, but an invalid time recorded there, so he's going to go again. Down, you see the car slam onto the apron, Tom, and the underbody of these cars is not going to like that very much. There is a configuration of this racetrack that does have cones blocking that area off, but we've decided in order to keep cones from getting stuck up under wings and pieces, we've decided to use the whole open back straightaway, but you cannot use it to gain an advantage or position.
I think that's a smart call. Cones flying around all over the place can actually even get stuck under the car. So I think we've done the right thing there. Blocker goes second place by a little under 0.03 of a second. And Blocker qualified 12th last week and came up to finish second. Again, he was the strongest car, and he seemed to really be a master of picking off individual cars at a time. He was really good at manipulating the track position and getting by a single car. When it was in a bigger field of cars, it was a little harder for him to manipulate, but he finally figured it out after things spread out on all those different restarts. So that 74 car, if he's got the same kind of race pace and he starts up in second instead of 12th, I wouldn't even be surprised to see him run away from the field.
Here's Dakota DiCienzo pulling on the racetrack now in the number 43. Again, we have 34 drivers lined up to start this one, and about half of them have laid down time so far. Demeritt at the top by 0.1 of a second over Adam Blocker. That's a pretty decisive qualifying blow from Demeritt to Blocker, so I'm liking the 144 as it stands. Again, my picks in the fantasy drafts, though, Philip Kraus in the number 19 car. Well, I'm maybe rethinking that. He has not yet put a qualifying effort in. He might wait till the end of qualifying to do it, but that's making me a little bit nervous. Andreas Eich, my other pick, looks like he has also not made a lap yet. He's sitting on pit lane waiting to leave. Now, I wonder if you have a look at the weather information here. As the day progresses, the temperatures are going to fall. We started at 83 down to 81. If you wait a little longer, you might get a slightly cooler racetrack.
Yeah, it doesn't take long to get up to speed and put a lap in, so you kind of gain two advantages. It's not going to hurt by sitting, and it can gain you some advantage with that weather cooling off a bit, as we see Eich now pulling out to make an attempt. Sorry, that's Marshall Stanley coming out for an attempt, but again, it doesn't really hurt you at all, and it can even help you mentally if you know what time you need to hit. Everybody can look at the leaderboard and see, okay, Chris Demeritt has done that 19.6. Maybe the weather's cooled off a little bit, and I know what I'm aiming for rather than just kind of rolling the dice and seeing what you got.
Marshall Stanley out of California through turn one. 170 miles an hour here at Phoenix. Typically you come here in the NASCAR stock cars and you're rolling about 110 through there, so plus 60 or 70 miles an hour is a lot of speed to have here around Phoenix. Not a lot of banking here as well. Turns 1 and 2 are slightly higher banked than turns 3 and 4, so you're approaching it at a different angle, a different speed. Could be down in fourth gear here as well, so you'll be getting up and down through the gears here tonight, Tom, and you're going to use the gears to help rotate that car. Downshift, it'll kick the car sideways and help you make the rest of the corner.
Look at Staley just going for cut distance, cut distance, cut distance. That's all he's trying to do. Almost tags the wall coming off of 4 across the line, and it looks like no improvement on the second lap. But I think that makes a great point. You mentioned the difference in banking, and it looks like NASCAR 2 or Oval 2. I'm not sure the technical term for that is. I'm a little new to the oval racing. Turn 2, okay.
No road course here anymore, I don't think.
Right, so coming through 2, it looks like it's pretty easy to keep the car off the wall, even if you don't cut the track much. But that 3-4 corner is going to be really tricky with as little banking as you have available. I think mixing that with our Aero push that we've been dealing with, here through this extra banking, I think at 1 it might not be as big a deal, but 3-4 I think is going to be a really critical corner tonight.
How about this? Andreas Eich in a second lap out goes quicker, goes up to second place. I feel pretty good about my picks here, Tom. So Eich in the 76 car goes to second. Ray Kingsbury jumps up to third. He had a good start last week, ended up crashed out by the end of the race. Matt Kingsbury here just getting his start, so the brothers Kingsbury making their qualifying effort here in the last couple minutes. It doesn't quite have the ring of Brothers Busch as it does in NASCAR. So the rest of the field now making their way out. Adam Crane in the 34 across the line. He's starting a flyer.
Keep a close eye on the 19. Looks like Philip Kraus has gone out to start an attempt. There he is riding the wall through 3 and 4, coming on to his first flying lap. 3.5 minutes left to play in qualifying, so we still have enough time to even reset if you don't like that first lap.
Across the line for Philip Kraus. reigning champion of the series and Rookie of the Year. I mean, he had a spectacular 2020 season. And looking to repeat some of that magic through turns 3 and 4, now down to the apron. One thing you won't see here tonight that you typically see when we have the stock cars here is you're not going to see people on the apron trying to get speed all the way below that yellow line. That's something that you'll see a lot in stock cars, not so much in the open wheelers. Kraus jumps up to second.
Wow, and he's got one more going, another slam down on the pavement of that apron, but running it nice and high on the way into 3 and then cutting it down for a really, really short distance line. Look at that, not even close to the wall off of 4. Wonder if he's going a little bit higher downforce and goes to P1.
Wow. By 9 thousandths of a second, Philip Kraus goes ahead of Christopher Demeritt to take provisional pole. And there's not a whole lot of people, I think, that can dethrone him at this point. Mike Kitchell is out on track in the 0-4. Not a name I remember from last week, so making his first start of the season in the Pennzoil car. This is a great-looking livery on this car as well.
Especially in that yellow desert sun. It looks great. Starting his first flyer through. Still looks like Philip Kraus in the Last Lap Motorsports team. They're sitting 4th in the team championship, but he's been leading the way both races. Matt and Ray Kingsbury both on that team, along with Josh Klog, Dan Ench, and Flynn Lazier. I'm looking to see if Lazier is back this week, but he may actually be missing out, and perhaps is why Mike Kitchell, as we watch him now, with a big wiggle off of 4, that might be why he's in tonight.
31st position for Kitchell on his first lap attempt. We'll see if he can do better on the second lap out. About a minute and a half left. Only 3 drivers to not make times. Christopher Mitrozin in the 46 car, Matt Hollaba in the number 02, and Don Hunter in the 35. Hollaba making an effort now. Kitchell across the line, a 20.255, which will put him 27th quick, about 0.6 off the current provisional pole sitter. Here's Matt Hollaba in the green and black car across the line to start his lap. And making a last-minute effort here. And we mentioned the weather and how that was going to change throughout qualifying. It's dropped still 2 degrees from when we started here, so not as significant as a change, I think, as a lot of people were expecting. And it's going to drop a lot more as the sun sets here in Avondale.
I think it's so cool that we have that simulated realistically in the desert. You know how quickly it cools off if you've ever been out in that West Coast desert, and it's absolutely happening in front of our eyes right now. Hollaba goes to 20th, so that's closing in on top half of the field, and is actually going to bail out of this second flying lap and perhaps reset, but he's only got 50 seconds to redo it. I think, in fact, you only get 2 laps, so he won't get another attempt.
Yeah, I think he just didn't feel something right in turns 1 and 2, so he will back out of his second qualifying lap. That will leave Philip Kraus and Christopher Demeritt on the front row for the second race of the season, the IndyCar 1909 150 from Phoenix Raceway. This is our second round of the season. We go road racing next week, Barber Motorsports Park in Alabama. That's going to be a fun one. We went there last season, had a full course yellow on the opening lap to tell you how crazy that was. We've also got tire compound. That's a whole other discussion we'll get into next week. But make sure you keep an eye out on Facebook and YouTube for the stream link when that goes up live on SimTV. So with that out of the way, I think it's about time we go over our keys to the race here, Tom. We talked about them a little bit in qualifying, but Aero push, big topic at Homestead. We're going to be mentioning this every single week, so let's get it out of the way now. It's going to be a challenge to pass tonight, and a lot of the passing will probably happen on pit lane.
Well, and it's a different challenge from last week because we basically had a very even oval at Homestead. You have basically the same corner on either end. Here we have 3 completely unique corners, so you're going to have to figure out your racing strategy. Are you strong in 1, strong in 2, or strong in 3, 4? And do you go for the pass at which points of the race? Again, knowing that you might even be able to complete the pass for the win off of 4 to the start-finish line.
Claustrophobia. This place looks very wide, but in reality, it's very narrow. You're also doing 19-second laps. It's fighter jets in a cereal bowl here tonight. We're going to be flying around here. It's going to feel very, very tight and congested, especially if we don't have cautions. Keeping all 34 cars ringing around there is going to be pretty wild.
And then again, that course cut that we look at right now on the track, now that we've left qualifying, everything below the yellow line is off limits. So keep an eye for those cars to be staying above on the banking through 2 and no longer cutting that distance like we were seeing in the qualifying.
Let's have a look at our starting lineup on the front row tonight. We already mentioned it's going to be, actually, let's do it this way here, Tom. On the front row, it's going to be the number 42. Oh, I had that backwards. We're, on the front row, it's Demeritt, and, of course, the 19 is the pole sitter here tonight of Phil Kraus. There we go. We're in progress here tonight, and they sort of threw a loop for me here, but here's their grid on the pit lane getting ready to go. We'll have one more look at our weather information before we get rolling into this. 77 in the air, 80 on the racetrack. That temperature is going to continue to fall as we head into the evening here. Also of note, 150 laps if we go green from start to finish is only 49 minutes of racing. That's an extraordinarily short race. It's going to feel very rapid fire. If we get cautions, that'll slow down, but pit strategy is going to be the name of the game tonight, especially when you pit and how much the tires will fall off. I don't think they're going to fall off all that much.
No, and do we even see those sticky tires come out maybe at the end if we get a quick dash to the green flag? I also want to bring it back to the teams and the open setups, because again, these cars are in open setup. You can change all of the different parameters, suspension, third spring, all that stuff is adjustable. And if you look at the starting lineup, we have Philip Kraus obviously on pole in the 19 car from Last Lap Motorsports, but both Kingsburys are also up there from Last Lap Motorsports. It looks like those Last Lap cars have really figured something out and set up this week that's making them a lot stronger, whereas last week I think a lot of those power slide cars were quick. So it's interesting to see as the track changes throughout the season, who figures out the setup the best.
Car is moving and rolling. There's car pulling over to the left. Ray Kingsbury is going to do that as well. I think that's both Kingsburys, actually. That's an interesting move. Going to drop to the back here. Potentially penalty points from last week could be why they're moving to the rear. Out up front, though, we're getting ready to go racing. It's the 19 car on pole of Philip Kraus here, Tom. 150 laps, 150 miles for the IndyCar 1909 150. Next week, we'll meet you at Barber Motorsports Park for left and right turns at a very challenging road course in Alabama. All right, time to go racing. It was the wetlands of Homestead last week. It's the desert in Phoenix this week on Sim TV. Philip Kraus, the last week's winner of Christopher Merritt on the front row. Here we go. Green flag flies, and we're racing at Phoenix.
Ooh, barely a jump for Kraus, but he gets in the lead, and we're double file a lot of the field still. Look at a couple of cars high, losing a bunch of positions. Is it Blocker around the outside up to 4th from 6th? And now the rest of the field staying above the yellow line. A couple people dropping tires, but things are clean so far.
Already a lap complete. That's how fast things are going to go here tonight. 149 to go. They're 3 wide on the front straightaway, almost 4 wide for a moment. That's Adam Crane leading that pack. Then Chris Cahill, Andrew Kinsella, Chris Dofer, Adam Dock, and more.
Watching for an advantage from the high or low line. It looks like it doesn't really have one through 1 and 2. Now on the bottom goes the advantage. No, the slingshot around the outside. It looks like the 30 car is picking up a spot, the 34 of Adam Crane.
Stouffer on the bottom in the Coca-Cola car, Crane on the high side in the VRS-sponsored vehicle. The opening laps, your tires are going to feel pretty good. Philip Kraus just ran his quickest lap of the day on lap number 2. They're going to feel very good now, but as soon as you start to get strung back out, that's where the challenge is going to come here at Phoenix, and already getting stacked up a little bit behind Cahill in that 57.
Well, take a look. We had side-by-side for 5th on back for at least a lap and a half, and check out the gap that the top 4 have pulled. Kraus, Demeritt, Ike, and Blocker are completely checked out, barely in frame when we pan down the back straightaway, and then the rest of this gaggle for the field, they're battling for 5th right now.
Look at Cahill. He started 9th, and he jumped up to 5th place already. A couple of those positions gained because of the Kingsburys pulling out of the way. Matt Kingsbury's got a lot of cars ahead of him now. Again, he started this race, would have started officially in 3rd, but has to go all the way back to 29th because of the penalty from last week, the collision that he was involved in. Look at this scrap on the back straightaway.
Another driver back in this zone is Henry Bennett, who was really, really strong last week at Homestead. He's in the dark green car with red wheels about 5 cars up the road. There he is, and he's really mired in traffic this week. Not nearly the dominant performance that we saw. He led an entire stint last week in the green flag run early on in the race, and he's not having the strongest performance tonight, down there in about 25th.
Marshall Stanley in the 55, Josh Clark going at it for position. That's for 21st. Up front, no changes here. Joe Branch on the inside of Dakota DiCienzo in the 43 car. Clark falling back now. Still a lot of side-by-side. Still some 3 wide. Henry Bennett duking and diving, trying to find a way around the drivers in front.
He wants to get back up towards the front, but I'm surprised how much these drivers can run side by side. It looks pretty comfortable even, and we mentioned claustrophobia being an issue. I wonder if actually this track is more comfortable to run side by side at than Homestead was because of the lower speed nature. Looks like the mechanical grip is pretty strong on these higher downforce package cars as well, and they're really able to kind of manipulate whether they want to run high, low, and gain advantage on both sides.
Here's Riley Thompson and Matt Hollaba. Thompson in the red and white car on the bottom, and Hollaba in the 0-2 up on the top side of the racetrack. And you mentioned that this is driving a little bit differently than we expected. Yeah, I think we expected that it was going to be different than we expected because of the new tire, the new damage model. Everything that we're seeing here tonight is new to us. So maybe it was unwise to to anticipate what was going to happen based off of last season. You can throw everything you learned out the window. These cars are racing entirely different. Will they get worse throughout the run? Probably, but at least after restarts, we know you can run side by side.
And again, that's because these cars went through a really, really big tire update between the 2 seasons. We came into this season with a fresh tire model that was only about 2 weeks old when we came into this. And again, because we're in a simulator, we can flip that light switch and update the cars immediately. There's no wrenches turning, no development needed, really. Once that update comes through, these drivers have to learn it really, really quickly. So we know from past past seasons what to look for. This season's a totally different animal.
Brian Carey up a couple spots. Andrew Kinsella, though, hasn't really gone anywhere. Defending winner of this race, as you mentioned a couple times earlier, and so far it seems like he doesn't have the track position to do what he needs, but you know who else doesn't? It's Christopher Demeritt. He's hunting down Philip Kraus. This is for the race lead.
Keep an eye on how he's staying tucked in nice and tight. Doesn't look like he had to slow down much, so the Aero push may not be as bad with the high downforce package as well. Now working their way into 3 and 4. Demeritt running a little bit lower on entry. It looks like he can really keep the car in the draft behind Kraus and really not lose much distance.
I'm interested to see how this progresses as the tires start to scrape the rubber off the surface. I think it's going to be a little bit trickier the later you get into a run. So if Demeritt wants to make this pass, I think he's got to get it started soon. But he is hounding the back of the 19. And while you mentioned that team might have found something here, Tom, it's looking like Demeritt's got race pace, something of which he had last week, but the strategy was what won him. See the 19 tracking out a little bit wider at the exit of turn 2. That just worries me because as the tire wears out and you start to lose the nose of the car just a little bit, if you're only an inch off the fence and you make one tiny mistake, you're going to smack that fence. It'll be day over for you. So I'd leave a little bit more room for error in case that happens because you don't have a lot of time to react in an Indy car for sure.
And this is speculation based on experience, but I suspect that the tire wear will actually be worse tonight than it was at Homestead. It really wasn't even a factor at Homestead as the pace wasn't falling off much, but down here we've already dropped quite a bit of time running over a half-second off pace, and that's because of the lower banking. Yes, we have the higher downforce package, but there's only so much that's going to do. So with the lower banking and lower speeds, like you mentioned, we're going to be grading the tires across the surface more.
Here comes Adam Blocker to the outside. This is a pass on Andreas Eich in the 76, side by side on the back straightaway. Blocker on the outside. Eich on the inside, dead even into turn 3, and we'll see if this outside lane is of use tonight. Looks like it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And both drivers leaving each other a lot of room side by side. Not much pinching or anything going on. Only lap 17 of 150, and this is as close to a short track really as I think we get with lap time speed.
Ray Kingsbury in the 25 making advances forward. Matt Kingsbury still stuck in 26th. Ray driving forward. Joe Branch attacking Riley Thompson now. Thompson in the 56 car, I feel like he's going backwards. Started this race in 16th. No, he's actually gone nowhere. A bit of a surprise to me that the progress or lack thereof tonight for Riley, but he'll tuck in behind Joe Branch and try to get this car working on the long run. Might need some adjustments on that car.
Mentioned Henry Bennett a little earlier as well. He's made his way up into the top 20. The 007 sits 19th, but he's got a mireful of Oysen Walsh, who's right behind in that yellow and maybe bright orange car, I should say. But both of those drivers fighting their way into the top 20, and it looks like Bennett, once he's gotten through, is basically holding up the rest of the field. He's got the rest of the field in his mirrors.
Here comes Kingsbury to the inside of Musselman in turn number 1. He'll make that pass happen very quickly. Here's Charles Ante and Evan Adams going for position. This is all the way back here in 27th. Lots of shuffling in the back part of the field. And also, let's keep an eye on our front runners, though, because Demeritt is looking really racy, and here comes the lap traffic already. This is going to be a huge factor as well.
And that's why I mentioned it. This is as close to a short track or near as makes no difference that we're going to get on the season, and that's going to mean this lap traffic is going to be a huge deal all night. Less than 25 laps into this race, and they're already in the way. And you can see maybe a little bit of draft down the straightaways, but now what do you do with them in these big corners? We've seen the outside work, but now the inside lane is left open, and Kraus kind of gets balked at the apex of 3 and 4. He's not going to make it through on this lap.
Demeritt closing in with the lap car ahead. It's going to move over way out wide. That's Dan Ench in the 52. Will be the first car to go a lap down. Good job getting out of the way. And Kraus will take advantage of that. Pull a couple tenths of a second of a gap, but you already see how many cars, they're all the way around the whole track. This is going to be very, very intense. This is like Bristol for the NASCAR Cup cars. There's just going to be super intense lap traffic action the entire duration of this race.
Yeah, the attention is heightened the entire time, and the other thing that just caught my eye, Adam Blocker has completely left Andreas Eich in the dust, and check him out, he's still actually closing in on the top 2, so Philip Kraus and Chris Demeritt need to really tack her up through the traffic, and make sure that they keep that buffer back to Blocker, because Blocker has proven to be quick in the race.
Notice there's a lot of drivers are spread out from first down to 20th, but behind Henry Bennett, there is a couple trains that are forming, and this is where our lap traffic is beginning to be a factor. So there's a whole lot of cars that are stacked up in the back half of the field, and it's going to get very interesting for Philip Kraus to negotiate it, because he's right in the back of this right now. It's 10, 15 cars he's going to have to pass and keep Demeritt behind him the entire time. That's a tall ask.
And those first couple were happy to move over because they were already feeling a little disconnected from the pack, but none of these drivers you can guarantee are going to want to move over. Look at the Aero wash now. That's the first view I've really seen of it, and Kraus washed all the way to the wall coming out of 1, diving down into 2 now, and he's going to have to be really, really careful as he slices under one of the cars, but they have to pick their spots really, really carefully at this point.
And here he goes to the inside of another driver now. That's Carlos Gomez Dutero that'll move on over. So move him a lap down. Here comes Demeritt. He's going to get locked in. Kraus almost got stuck in behind that car. And when you race NASCAR here, you've got that apron that you can bail and you can get by a bunch of lap traffic. You can't do that here. So you were going to want to go 5 wide and go to the inside. You just don't have that option. So Demeritt is going to size up Philip Kraus and figure out where he can get him stuck behind lap traffic. That might be the easiest way. See the car push there, though. Tom can't get any purchase with those front tires.
Yeah, so we ride with Demeritt looking at the back of Kraus. These are the top 2 slicing under lap traffic. All the cars on the high side of the track are lapped at this point, but they're all battling for their own positions. There are the top 2. The red and white of Kraus leads over the blue and black of Demeritt. And so far so good, but you can guarantee these guys are super tense in those cars right now.
Only 28 laps in. We're almost a fifth of the way through this race. That's how fast it's going. Adam Blocker's in the middle of some chaos back here as well. Handful of lap cars to get through. They're double wide in front of him. That's got to be frustrating. All the progress he was making on the leaders is going to be erased by this here.
Yeah, look at the gaps on the left side of your screen. You can see Blocker's actually dropped to a 1.5 seconds back from Kraus and Demeritt. And he had closed within a second at one point, so he's kind of a lone soldier right now, picking his way through this traffic. Kraus and Demeritt, I even wonder if they're almost working together to slice through the traffic, but using traffic to your advantage is a specific skill as well, and I haven't seen that necessarily get pulled out of their tool belt, but they're side by side coming through 4.
Battling for the lead, side by side, working through lap traffic. Kraus leads that lap, but Demeritt did get ahead for a moment. He chops right down in front of Demeritt. That was really dicey. Car high in 1 and 2. If you get out of the groove here, Tom, you're just going straight to the wall. It's so hard to run the high groove here and not find yourself up in the safer barrier.
Yeah, the only place I've seen that high side work is on fresh tires through right here, 3 and 4. You can get the slingshot and then pass onto the front straightaway. It's worked, but I bet at this point, 30 laps in, the tires are starting to feel a little icky. And I have to wonder when that pit window opens and how soon these guys are going to bail to it, because you almost want to get out of this lap traffic if you can get away with it on the pit lane.
So likely be a, if it's not a 1-stopper, it's just barely a 2-stopper. I could easily imagine us going 75-ish laps. But maybe you want to split that up a bit more. Blocker getting by traffic pretty efficiently back here. One thing to note with lap traffic, they're generally going to be more resistive to the leaders, because if you stay on the lead lap, you're good. Once you get past, it's kind of game over at that point. You're more willing to let the 3rd place guy by than you are willing to let the leader by. So that could bring Blocker back to this front group.
He lost a little bit of time early on in that lap traffic, but has actually gotten through really quickly. And look at his pace. As soon as he's cleared the lap traffic, he's already clawed back about 2/10 of that. So I do think that 74 car, the blue car that's leaving your screen right now, that car is really quick again tonight.
Already we've put all but the top 24 a lap down, so about a dozen cars are now 1 lap back from the race leader. Tony Schowen in the 31 car started his race back in 12th. He has gone effectively nowhere. Wilson Nito in the 80 car. We thought he'd have a little bit better of a qualifying effort than he did after his qualifying effort at Homestead, but here he is running 13th, up 4 spots from his start. Matt Holliba, 20th to 14th. Great climb for the 0-2.
Yeah, and speaking of climbs, Ray Kingsbury from last to 17th. I think they dropped all the way to the back, did they not?
Yes.
So that 25 car has made massive progress. He qualified inside the top 5, so we're keeping an eye on both Ray Kingsbury and the 21 of Matt Kingsbury as well, who's back in 21st. So Ray has done a little better job to get through the field. But back at the front, these two are not going anywhere, and they're quickly getting a mirror of the bright blue 74. Blocker is coming.
This is on board with Tanner Watkins in the number 24 with the leaders behind him. Not been an amazing night for pace for Tanner. Already about to go a lap down to lap number 37. The Phoenix Sun setting in the background. Here comes Demeritt out to the inside for turn 3. He's going to sail up the inside, try to grab a position. Caution is out.
I wonder if he had a tip off that caution might be coming out, made a lunge for it, but it didn't work. So now we're going to our first caution period. And I don't know if it's a 1-stopper, do you stop now and guarantee that there's only one more? Do you stay out? Because we really don't even have a great indicator of what the tire wear is, other than now that you're mired in lap traffic, we're many seconds off pace.
So Dan Ench in the 52 was the cause of the caution. Here he is through the middle of 1 and 2. he's going to get turned right there. Just get the rear wheel touch there. A quick snap. Almost curious what car that was that he made contact with. I think it was at Stouffer, the Diet Coke car. It looks like it is. He was 6th place. Comes up the racetrack. Oh, there was just a touch with the wheels, and that's all it takes to send that car around.
I think he thought he was clear and started to move up just a bit to try to get back in that line, and it didn't work out. So, quick caution period now as the rest of the field starts to collect up. Here's one more look at it.
Thankfully, no one was seriously damaged in that. Great reflexes there by everyone at the back of the field as we send back live here. The field is on pit lane, so looks like we're going to make this a pit stop sequence here. And this is all about how efficiently can you get in and out of the box. If you can grab a position, now's the time to do it. So into the boxes for Philip Kraus, Demeritt, Ike, Blocker, Kinsella, and more. And already Blocker pulling away. And he's going to come off a pit lane where he left, or where he entered, rather. Oh, did he actually beat Demeritt off pit lane? He might have, and he has. So Adam Blocker jumps up to 2nd.
Yeah, they rolled off almost in tandem and picks up that spot on pit lane, which it's proving to see, at least look like, it's easier to make a pass on pit lane than it is on the track past those first 5 to 7 laps. Once those tires start to fall off, it's looking like lap traffic picks and pit lane passes are going to be the story of the night.
Started the night at 83 degrees track temp. It's actually come up just a little bit with all the friction of the drivers running around. Air temp, though, still a nice warm 76 degrees Fahrenheit. A gentle wind out of the east here. And the sun has just gone behind the grandstands. Not quite sunset, but we are working towards the 1/3 mark of this race. With our first caution being for Dan Ench with contact with Chris Stouffer at the exit of turn number 2. No damage. Both of them will continue. And I got to be honest, that was about the least bad of a caution you could have with 34 cars at Phoenix. This is a pretty amazing first 35 laps to not have anybody touch anybody.
Well, to me, that just touches on the quality of field. This is one of the highest quality fields that we've seen in any league, really, and we have over 60 drivers that want to be here racing. We narrow it down to the top 30-something just to really narrow down that quality of racing, and that's why we have such clean runs, but also, you know, everybody did a great job to avoid making that incident bigger than it needed to be.
See the fans up on Rattlesnake Hill. Great spot to view this racetrack, all from one end. At the other end are where the grandstands are. This track has seen some configuration changes in recent years, swapping the start-finish line, something of which the iRacing model does not yet have. But the current start-finish line now in the real world is just beyond this. It's essentially right here, right as you exit what is currently NASCAR Turn 2. And it basically, they swapped the ends of the racetrack. And it was kind of funny. All the NASCAR drivers actually had a track map with the current corner numbers from this version on the new version, just because they were too confused to swap the ends, which was really interesting to me. All right, let's line up for a restart. Kraus going to be starting up on the front position here with Blocker, Demeritt, Ike, and Cahoe in behind. Chris Cahoe in the 57. Actually, I made a mistake. It wasn't Stouffer, it was Cahoe that was involved in that. 2 Chris's running nose to tail. And been a pretty good run for him so far, and I don't see any damage on that, so he got away with it, I think. With that out of the way, our first caution is complete. Pace car is going to make the hard left onto pit lane. Be 90 laps to go this time by, about 38 minutes of racing remaining. Here we go. The IndyCar 1909 150 at Phoenix is back green again.
Everybody clings to the upside wall to make sure that they cannot get past before that start-finish line, and Kraus already starting to run away with it a little bit. Cahoe under attack from behind. One of the drivers going low on turn 1, but it has to slap back in. That's the kind of chrome teal car.
Robert Malezka, in the 91 car. He's got Adam Crane, Tony Schowen in behind him. It's a bit of a roadblock back here. Everyone's trying to find room to race, and they don't have much of it. Crane, Schowen, we're going to go 3 wide. Wilsonito in the 880 car decides to not do that. He'll sit in behind for now. Let these guys figure it out first.
He's already climbed up a number of positions. Look at that, trying to cling his way up into the top 12. A big slide from the rear end into 3. As he lifted just a little bit, dropped a gear or 2, and now loses a bunch of momentum, gets passed around the outside and drops back 1 more spot. At the back end, move around a lot.
Yeah, a lot of sliding in there for sure. Matt Holleba jumps up a couple more positions. Been a really impressive climb for him, 20th to 12th, plus 8 positions, which in this field is a pretty big challenge. So he's done that. Kinsella to 7th. reigning winner of this race. Brian Carey, 10th to 8th. He's been stuck in this 8th spot for quite some time, now chasing Kinsella and Stouffer.
Last time we saw the battle for 5th on back start to go side by side and the top 4 ran away. These guys have done a better job to not challenge each other too much and keep within touch of the leaders. Interesting, the leaders have strung out a little bit more than last time. So Kraus, Blocker, Demeritt, Ike are all about equidistant, with Kehoe still in the touch a little bit. And Kraus is really establishing himself to look to have the pace to run away now that he doesn't have to worry about Demeritt behind.
Noticing that we're pretty evenly spread here for the majority of the field. Last time it seemed like the front half got spread out and the back half was all kind of smushed together. Seems like we've got a bit more even of a spread now. But one thing we also noticed on that first run is that Kraus was able to pull away at the race start, but it was Demeritt that actually ended up closing that gap back. So I don't think Kraus is done yet. I think he's actually going to fall back into the clutches here of Adam Blocker and Demeritt before too long. Notably, though, Demeritt has not been able to get by Adam Blocker.
No, and I'm trying to pay attention to whether or not there's any aero wash really involved. Remember, Demeritt was able to run really, really close to the back of Kraus before that caution, and now seems to be taking his time a lot more as he's behind Blocker. But Blocker doesn't have the pace to really run down Kraus either, so I do wonder, early on, was Kraus kind of controlling the pace of the field, or have these drivers shifted their attention to maybe saving the equipment a little bit better, as they maybe suspect that this will be a long green flag run?
I think that's a big factor for sure, is that we've seen that there's a high potential for this race to go green all the way to the checkers. The incident that we saw was a very minor one at that, so I don't think we're going to see a lot of cautions tonight. We've only had one so far.
But remember, that incident was between a lapped car and a lead lap car. It was 5th place, Chris Kehoe, trying to lap one of the other drivers around him. And it was the lapper that actually kind of lost track of where that was and ended up with the incident. So I think we're in a good spot to stay clean as long as the field is kind of strung out like this. But once those leaders start to catch the back of the field, especially if the back of the field's packed up again, that's when we really hit worry time for whether or not the cautions can come out.
Marshall Stanley in behind Osen Walsh and Matt Kingsbury in the 21. And Matt was having a little bit of trouble moving forward on the previous run. He's up inside the top 20 now. Ray has made a bit more progress now. He's back up inside the top 15. And these guys could easily be a threat by the end of this race, but they still have a lot more to go, and it gets harder to pass the farther up the field you get. Schowen on the outside of Hollaba. This is actually Hollaba grabbing 11th place away from Schowen. And it's really interesting to me because I think we're running a very different aero package than we ran last week at Homestead. This aero package is identical to what we're going to run next week at Barber. So I wonder if it's not so much about are you good at ovals, are you good at road courses. I wonder if it's about are you good with the high downforce versus the low downforce package. That could be something we'll keep our eye on for Barber.
Yeah, it's kind of 3 totally separate animals. You've got the road courses, you've got the high downforce and the low downforce setups for different ovals. And I think we're going to see different teams and different setups shine on all 3 of those categories, as that's definitely coming true this week. Kraus was struggling to be in the top 10 last week at points, and now has come out to be one of the strongest cars in the field. But just behind, as soon as we introduce this lap traffic, look at the top 3 have come together. They're in the same shot right there. Blocker is the blue car in second, and Demeritt, the 3rd car with the lighter blue. As we ride on board with him, he's a lot closer. They were almost 2 seconds back at one point, now within a half second.
That's just how quickly things can change here at Phoenix. The exit at turn 2 now down the back straightaway. Kraus, Blocker, Demeritt, all last time by ran within 0.2 of a second of each other, but I think we're going to see this, as I call it, accordioning back together, kind of contracting back as they get into some lap traffic. You heard the tires on Demeritt's car struggling in turn 4 behind Adam Blocker. I think that aero push is going to get worse and worse. As we mentioned, we didn't see it get to the point where they couldn't follow, but they definitely struggled to keep the nose under the car, especially at corner exit.
Yeah, it really doesn't look too bad, and there's kind of a cushion when you're following behind somebody through traffic, that you're really in a safe zone. You can kind of follow their moves and even take advantage of if they get slowed up. But once you drop a little too far back and a lapped car can slot between you, then you're in a precarious situation. And Andres Ike is absolutely there, as he's a couple seconds back of this top 3. Both Blocker and Demeritt are really kind of in that comfortable cushion where they can follow whatever Philip Kraus does if they choose. But Blocker's looking pretty racy. Look at him hunting around up and down on the banking.
Yeah, trying the high side, which I think is the key to making a pass here, is if you can get some traffic on the low side. That was really dicey out of turn 4. I think that's, who's that going a lap down? Is that Evan Adams in the 59. That was just a bad place to be. Dan Inch in the 52. He's in pit lane. He's called it a night by the looks of it. Saw him hit pit lane, but as the leader is now working over. Is that Henry Bennett about to go lap down?
Yeah, he dropped way back. I think they were actually passing maybe A.J. Musselman earlier, and now Henry Bennett is the next car on their radar. And he's dropping low. Look at him protect. He's actually doesn't want to get past.
Well, you know why? Because he's got a teammate in second place right now. If he makes this harder for the 19, this could make that a lot easier for Blocker to make this pass. They touch. Oh, no, they crash.
Whoa. That was a big swoop from Bennett. He had a little bit of contact, went to the middle of the track, and then hard up towards the wall. I wonder if there was a little bit of damage. But that was a big impact, and Kraus is going to be out of this race. Lost the left front.
I don't think that's going to be a very popular move either. I think there might have been some shenaniganry at play there.
I mean, I hate to say it looks intentional, but that was a hard right hand down from Bennett. So whether there was damage or not, there was a small amount of contact early on. Look at this coming through 3 and 4. Bennett goes low to try to protect the position, makes Kraus go high. Blocker almost gets a nose in there for a second. They're close to 3 wide. Yeah. There's the small touch. And then just a hard right hand down for some reason from Bennett to collect the leader.
Well, that just shocks me because it's not like Henry Bennett to do something like that. But as you mentioned, Tom, it's hard to say that doesn't look intentional as he just sort of turns right. But either way, for Philip Kraus, this is a disastrous start to the season as his car and Bennett's end up in the safer barrier in turn number 1. And for Bennett, this was already a day that was not going well, and to end it with a crash is not looking good for championship hopes, and a disastrous day for Kraus as well.
No, and he was, again, 5th back at Homestead. He was within the championship hunt. He was running around 20th today, which isn't great, but, you know, he could have absolutely been able to continue going on. Back to pit lane for most of the field, and really, last week we saw Demeritt win on strategy. If this starts to turn into a strategy race where they're going to roll through the pit lane multiple times more, what are we, closing in on halfway through this race? 62 of 150 laps complete. Does Blocker get another good run through the pit lane or not?
We'll see if he can beat Demeritt out. It's going to take a little bit of luck for Demeritt to get out of pit lane ahead of Blocker, and he will not. So Blocker, Demeritt, Andreas Ike 1 through 3, then Cahill and Kinsella 4th and 5th.
Blocker with a really strong stop. Might have actually had a little bit less fuel to fill, but it's not going to do him much. A handful of cars actually stay out this time through.
I think those are lap down cars. Everyone were still organized correctly. Yeah, 7.8 second stop for Blocker. It was a full second slower for Demeritt, which is interesting to me, but a little bit of RNG at play there as well. Of course, pit stops are randomized within a certain window, and sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. It has been a wild one so far today for the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series here from Phoenix Raceway, the IndyCar 1909 150. 2 cautions so far, the latest involving the 007 of Henry Bennett and the leader, the 19 of Philip Kraus, crashing into turn number 1. Questionable for sure. We'll see. Will definitely be penalties coming out of that, I'm sure. But what the reasoning for the collision was will be the big question mark in everyone's minds. Next week, we'll head to Barber Motorsports Park for our 3rd round before taking a bit of a break before round number 4. So make sure you join us next Sunday, 7:15 Eastern Standard Time, for the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series. Blocker leads the way right now. Christopher Demeritt, last week's winner, in 2nd place. And it's looking pretty good for Demeritt so far. When you think about this season as consistency being key, like it was for Philip Kraus last time out. 1st last week, 2nd this week. I wouldn't crush this car over beating Adam Blocker tonight.
No, and I think he's just looking at past results from different seasons. I think Demeritt's really needing to perform well at these early ovals. We have 11 ovals on the schedule, 5 road courses, and as I scan down, Adam Blocker is the defending winner at 2 of those 5 road courses. So you can pretty much look at that and get on paper that the 74 car is fast at both ovals and road courses. I don't know Demeritt's history nearly as well. He's not listed as a defending champion or defending winner anywhere on those road courses. So if it's true that maybe Blocker stays strong, whether Demeritt is strong as well, again, I don't know the full history of all these different drivers, but I think it's really critical for Demeritt to perform well on these early rounds. Maybe pull out a little bit of the championship lead so he's got that cushion in case Blocker comes out swinging on one of those road courses.
Sun is setting here at Avondale, Arizona. Temperatures continue to fall and the intensity continues to rise. We had 34 drivers start this race, make that 33. The only driver completely out of the race so far is Henry Bennett. You could add Charles Ante to that, and now Philip Kraus to make that 3. As out front, Adam Blocker is going to take us to the green flag here on lap number 65. Green flag back in the air here at Phoenix. Blocker fires off to Demeritt. Ike, Cahoe, Kinsella behind.
Already going side by side for fourth. Two cars running in tandem, and that's the quickest way to guarantee those top three are going to run away. It happened quickly. Kinsella all the way up to fourth over Cahoe now. They sorted it out pretty quickly, and that's good. They're going to be able to slot back in line and not lose too much distance to the top three, but you can see the top three are already out of frame, and they're well over a second up the road.
Some more fighting happening a bit deeper in the field. Wilson Nito in the 80 and Tony Showen in the 31. He's going to go to the bottom of the racetrack, make that the top. Joe Branch hunts for the bottom in the Coca-Cola car. This is for 14th. Lots of racing all over the racetrack. Blocker, though, didn't really run away on the restart. Still only 2/10 up the road from Demeritt.
No, I think Demeritt let the last stint breathe a bit, and now is going to keep the pressure on. Again, thinking back to that cushion I talked about, when you're right behind somebody, when you intercept that lap traffic, you want to be within 2 or 3 car lengths so that the lap traffic can't get between you. The top 3 have that distance covered easily, and then about 10 car lengths back to fourth, which is Kinsella, defending race winner.
Here comes Ray Kingsbury up the inside of Matt Hollaba. Hollaba cracking the top 10. We'll have to give up a spot here to Kingsbury. I think the 25 is the quicker car. Pulls ahead into turn number 3 and should have this unless Hollaba can roll the outside lane, which he's going to try to do. Front tire's going to get some grip out there, and he'll hang on for now.
The outside through 3 and 4 looks really strong. I've seen every single person who's tried it has led across the start-finish line in memory, so I think outside is where you want to be on the high side through 3 and 4. Kingsbury has to slot back in line in the black and gold car, and he's having a heck of a race up into the top 10 from the back of the field.
Pulls even on the bottom of the racetrack in 3 and 4, but as you mentioned, the momentum around that high side, again, with the lack of banking in that corner, the wider radius means so much more than it does in turns 1 and 2. The other thing to note of turn 1 and 2, the way that it's paved, you get out of that highly rubbered in groove, there's just absolutely no grip. Whereas turn 3 and 4, because people run more across the racetrack more, it's more evenly rubbered in and not quite as many marbles up there as well. So you can run a bit wider in 3 and 4 than you can in 1 and 2 for multiple reasons. Front though, Adam Blocker. This is a very familiar story. Think back to last week at Homestead.
This is looking more like that first green flag that we saw, though. The top 2 breaking away. Demeritt right behind. This time it's Adam Blocker leading him, though. And I do wonder how much urgency there is in the cockpit of the 144. Looks pretty patient right now. And he absolutely won last week's race on patience and control. Again, fuel saving for many laps, over 50 laps at the end of that, or over 30 laps at the end of that race. Ike has dropped off, and closing in is Kinsella, who started to drive away, completely driven away actually from Cahoe. Look at that.
Kinsella last time by was 1.5 faster than Andreas Ike. Demeritt was 2/10 slower than the race leader, Adam Blocker, who just ran only 1/10 off of his best lap of the day. So the 74 car is trimmed and tuned up right now. We'll see if he can grow that lead. It's now half a second. It's just, I was just watching his hand movements, and especially in 3 and 4. The way that he's got this car set up is that he can just turn it in and then just balance it right on that steering. Doesn't have to input more. See the juke back to the right? It's just perfectly balanced here, Tom. So on edge, but that's how you're fast. Loose is fast here. As long as you're not dragging that right rear tire out in the wind, you're pretty good.
Yeah, it's easy to get the perception from third person on TV that these cars are just absolutely glued to the road, and you just turn and they have infinite grip, but they don't. You see the amount of work that that Blocker's doing on the wheel. Yes, it's fine. Yes, it's not a lot of motion, but he's absolutely controlling that car on the limit through specifically 3 and 4. Just behind, Demeritt is sticking with him, but they're much closer. Demeritt a little quicker that time through on that lap, but has yet to lead a lap in this race, even though he's been in contention the entire time.
He's always had someone in front of him, whether it was the 19 or the 74. Deeper in the field, here's Mike Kitchell in the 04. He's on the outside of Tanner Watkins. Yellow versus black here down the back straightaway. Love that Pennzoil paint scheme on the 04 car. It's a real classic look.
And the 04 is going to get the high line through 3 and 4. Does it work out for him? It always looks like it's not going to work. And then right here at the finish, through the oval 4, it just swoops you across the nose of the other car. And you can take the position, it looks like, pretty easily.
Adam Crane trying to get back forward to Tanner Watkins as well. Adam hasn't had the best of nights. Started 7th, all the way back in 22nd now, so a very far fall for the number 34 VRS driver. Up front, though, Demeritt did run 1/10 quicker than Blocker last time by, back into some lap traffic. That was the 51 of Lester Rorschach in the 51 Dallara, and with Demeritt closing, they have 3 seconds back to Andreas Ike. It's really just between these two. And just like last week at Homestead, they've established the gap. The that these two are probably the ones who are going to have to beat for the championship. We already know that. There are road courses on the schedule, but as you mentioned, Blocker's pretty good there too. So Demeritt's focus, I think, has to be on the road tracks this year if he's going to compete with Adam.
Yeah, I'm just kind of doing mental math here on my fingers. It looks like there's about 10 to 12 laps before from the green flag to when they start to catch the back of the pack. And that's kind of the calm period where all you're doing is positioning yourself to make sure that you can deal with that lap traffic appropriately. If you look a little bit back in the field, Holubus continuing his climb up towards that top 10, sits 9th, has ditched Ray Kingsbury a bit, and now is really hounding Mleczka just in front.
Couldn't quite get a run there that time, at least nowhere to go with it. Follows the 91 into turn 1. Ray Kingsbury is still there. And he's been trying to get past Matt Holubus for a little while now. And brother Matt is back in 16th, so they both continue to climb, and we expected this. I mean, the penalties were not going to hold them back for very long. Downshift for Kingsbury to get some torque and rotate that car. And now back in the slipstream on the front stretch.
Yeah, it's a great run. He just moved a lane up through 3 and 4 and was able to close about a car length on the back of Holubus just in front. So Kingsbury's hunting around, looking for that grip, looking for that aerodynamics, and he's finding it a bit on the high side through 3 and 4, but drops off once you have to run low in the wash of turns 1 and 2. That really hurts you.
Under the flag stand at 185 miles an hour here in Phoenix, Andreas Eich and Kinsella run 3rd and 4th. And Kinsella, as you mentioned after the restart, got a big run away from Chris Cahill. And now trying to take that run all the way to 3rd place and Andreas Eich.
The lap car almost into the wall, leaving 4. It's going to hold these guys up through 1 and 2 just a little bit. And Demeritt's falling out just a little bit. He's looking at him 8/10ths back from the leader. That's more than 2 or 3 car lengths, and I think that's kind of in danger of getting a lap car between the two of them. These two have no worries at all. Kinsella, great run into the draft, dives low for turn 1.
Kinsella make that one look easy, goes by Andreas Eich. Wonder if the 76 made an adjustment that he didn't like. He doesn't seem to have the pace as he did on the previous run. He's fallen 4 seconds off of the race leader. And move Kinsella to P3, and Cahill now going to close that gap to the 76.
Kinsella even dropping 2 below the yellow line to try to get that car turning through 3 and 4. Gains him a car length or 2 through that section of the track, and now is almost looking like it's no effort to pull away from Eich.
And behind him, saw Chris Stouffer. He's being hounded by Brian Carey as they work through some lap traffic. Carey is a driver we should keep our eye on. Very quiet driver for sure. Started 10th, running 7th. And I'm not sure you can win the championship just top 5 in yourself to death, but you can certainly get awful close if you finish 5th, 6th, 7th every week. And for Brian Carey, this is a pretty good place to be, running right behind Chris Stouffer.
Well, sure, Philip Kraus won last year.
Slow car. Sorry, Tom. There was a real slow car at the exit at turn 2. It was Charles Ante, I believe. Almost a pile up there as they came up off the corner.
Continuing to stay high. I think he's maybe just trying to let as many people through as he possibly can.
I think he got in the wall in turn 1. Back a little bit farther and see it. Goes off in here. See, just misses the turn-in point. Tom runs up the racetrack, gets into the fence. This is where that real tense moment is. So slow, right on the racing line. That was awful. Close to being a big wreck there.
Ooh, one of the cars behind almost got into the turn 1 wall as well as the neon green and white car, maybe just inside the top 10. But Ante, you're right, touched the wall. Was trying to be a gentleman, just run high to let Kinsella through, and it ended up putting him in the wall.
He will come down pit lane, some damage to fix on that car. Meanwhile, Stouffer and Carey continue their battle for 6th.
What I was going to mention is Kraus won the championship last year with only 1 win, so I do think that just, like, as you mentioned, top 5 in yourself to death is a really good way to stay in the hunt, but you are going to need some wins under your belt. So 7th isn't where you necessarily want to be. Nito also having a good climb up. It's the black and green car on the bottom of the track just there.
Adam Dock behind him in the number 99. Dock started this race in 11th. He's been stuck outside the top 10 for the entire night, trying to gain some grip on Nito in the 80 car, who started back in 17th and has climbed forward. Cool. Another slow car at the exit of turn 2. That's going to get dicey. The more and more we see that, more drivers getting up into the fence. Not really a good place to get out of the way here. Look at this, Matt Kingsbury, Joe Branch, Tony Schowen all together. This is for 14th place.
We're coming up on lap 30 on this stint since the last time most of the cars have been through pit lane, and I'm seeing real big signs of tire wear on a lot of these cars. Many drivers running up really high, close to the turn 1 wall specifically, but also having a harder time making this outside, this bottom side work through 3 and 4. As you can see, the 31 gets touched and spins.
Across the racetrack, caution is out, parts scatter. Tony Schowen slides to a stop on the front straightaway. Our third caution of the night. Contact with Schowen and Kingsbury.
I almost feel like I jinxed that. I was mentioning it looks like it's harder and harder to stay on the bottom through 3 and 4, especially when you're too wide. And as I mentioned, if that car washes up and spins, the car that was on the high side, is the 31 of Schowen, goes around.
Yeah, Kingsbury on the inside. Remember, he was serving a penalty from last week. I can't decide if the I think Schowen was pinching him maybe just a little bit there, Tom. Didn't track out maybe as wide as Kingsbury was expecting.
Yeah, I sure don't think that incident was necessary, as you saw a lot of track up to the wall. But again, if you're on the bottom, you should really only go as high as the guy on the top side lets you go. So it's a little bit of both at fault, I might say. It's hard to say as we ride on board. Maybe we'll see how much lock Kingsbury had in the wheel, if he was actually pushing as we thought, or...
Yeah, he has a lot in it here, Tom. He's probably going to unwind just a little bit. Yeah, I think the 31 could have been farther right there. So I think it was definitely some fault on both drivers, but Kingsbury will have to head to pit. Oh, he got in the wall hard in turn 1 after that, so that might be a DNF for him. This in the right front suspension on that car.
Has a heavy pancake.
So our third caution of the night, back down to pit lane, and you can easily go to the end on fuel from here. But will we need to? Will we get another caution? We've been seeing them at basically 30-lap intervals so far at lap number 95. So are we done yet, or we have one or two more?
Good stop for Demeritt. Almost beats Blocker out of pit lane. Did he get it? Not quite.
Nope.
But it was really, really close. Blocker had a big burnout leaving the box and didn't get going very well. Demeritt almost took the position on pit lane, and I think, again, I don't think he's been pushing particularly hard for that top spot yet, but if he inherited it there, that would have been a really big tell as to whether or not he's got the pace to run away. It looks like Blocker really has strong pace in that 74 car. We don't know exactly what kind of pace the 144 has yet.
I can tell you that he has the fastest lap of the race so far by about a half a tenth of a second. That's a 20.082. And it's really been the lap traffic that's been the limiting factor. Also in green flag laps that we've run, we can't really get into a green flag pit stop cycle where Demeritt can apply some of the strategic tomfoolery that he did at Homestead. I don't think he's going to get that opportunity. You're just going to have to outrace Adam tonight, and that is a tall, tall task. It's hard to do that. You're just not going to get the long green flag run, and we don't need to make a pit stop. If this race goes green to the end, you're not going to hit pit lane once more. So Demeritt better hope that Blocker gets held up in traffic, because I don't think he's going to get to play some pit stop.
Sure, and I think we'll make it to about lap 110, 115 pretty comfortably with no cautions. But once that once the field starts to overlap itself again, remember there's that 10 to 15 lap buffer until the lap traffic starts to become a factor for the leaders, and that's really where we've seen every single caution come from, I think, except for this last one. So the last 30 laps of this race are going to be in lapping territory, in lap traffic territory, and that's high risk.
Couple drivers going to take the wave around here. One of them, Dakota DiCienzo in the 43, to get his wave around, as will the 52 of Dan Ench. Add one more to the list there as well. There goes DiCienzo. So restarts, that was a topic of discussion at the beginning of this. We saw a couple issues at Homestead. We haven't seen crashes on the restarts yet, but as the end of the race gets closer, do you think that's a flashpoint, these tight, close restarts?
It looks like the field spreads out pretty quickly, so I think it might be, barring a little cheeky restart from second, third, or fourth to try to get a run, maybe jump it a little bit. I don't know if it's easy to figure out when the green flag flies, but outside of something like that, I think the field, at least in the top 5, will string out on these restarts every time.
Pace car is going to make the hard left onto pit lane. We'll be working lap number 98 of 150. Under 20 minutes of racing to go if we go green to the end from here. We've had 3 cautions so far, slowing the progress. Green flag back in the air.
There it is this time again, the top 5 stringing out, and then as things accordion a little bit less towards the back, people starting to get 2 by 2. But the field really playing nicely this time through. Look at everybody single file, it looks like.
Not a lot of funny business here, not a lot of room for error. Down the front straightaway, here comes Stouffer to the inside of Cahill on the front straightaway. Brian Carey watching from behind, hoping he can pounce on whoever runs wide. It'll be Cahill out of turn 2. Carey will try to squeeze up underneath before Cahill can get to the apex, and that'll be for 6th.
This is going to be tricky. It's definitely not preferred to be on the bottom. Watch Cahill around the outside. Can he make the run work? And again, whoa, they're going to touch.
Oh, that was really dicey. Cahill gathers it back up. They did touch. Maybe some damage to the 57, but it'll just be slight. That could have been a pretty major impact, but Cahill slow through turn 2, couldn't get down to the apex, and is going to drop more positions now.
Yeah, just got freight trained, and actually Kingsbury dove through really quick. He's up to 7th now from the back of the field. That's the black and gold card looking at the back of Brian Carey. So that slight contact between Carey and Cahill. Cahill really is the loser from that, back to 11th.
50 laps to go here at Phoenix. At the front of the field, it's still Blocker in the 74. Christopher Demeritt has not yet led a single lap here today. Adam Blocker has led 41. Here's Ray Kingsbury. He hasn't led anything, but he's moving forward very quickly to the point where I think he could be a legitimate concern if we get another caution or two. He's got a lot of pace on the restarts, especially because he's so aggressive.
Yeah, and I think the top two are really, they're pretty safe on those restarts. It looks like Kinsella's dropped off the back of the two of them as well. Kinsella's still got a lot of pressure from Ike, the green and red cars battling for 3rd and 4th. But the one question that I just thought of really is Demeritt did a masterful job last week of maintaining his resources. He fuel saved really well. He was really patient, and I wonder if he's doing a little bit of that with the tires this week. Has he tested those tires and seen how long they'll run? And is he happy cruising in 2nd place to kind of maintain that distance of about a half second as he is right now until the later run in the stints, and maybe have a little bit more left in the tank tire-wise.
Oh, that was squeeze up the outside for Adam Doc. They're going to touch, and he's in the fence in turn 1. That's going to hurt.
That incident started leaving turn 4.
Parts, there's a caution now as the parts slide down the banking. Probably a good thing. If anybody had hit those parts and pieces, that would have been pretty ugly. It was a weird one. He just scraped the wall, then got hit there. Man, that is not fun.
A little bit of ping-ponging down the front straightaway. He touched the wall mildly, moved down, and then they got a little bit more assistance from the car on his inside and really got put up in the wall the second time. And it makes the incident between Henry Bennett and Kraus make a little bit more sense, because those touches down that front straightaway were almost nothing, and it looked like both drivers had a really hard time controlling the car. So that helps me give Bennett a little bit more benefit of the doubt. We don't know yet, but everybody, again, hitting pit lane.
Pit road is closed here, so you can't make a pit stop. There, see the lights on the pit entry, so no one will be allowed to make a pit stop this time through unless you're willing to take the penalty, as someone is in the background. Well, theirs will peel off as well. 45 laps to go, and our 4th caution of the night for a crash in turn 1. Adam Dock in the 99. Missing some parts and pieces that I would argue are important for open wheel cars. It's been a pretty interesting night, to say the least. I am encouraged, I have to say, by the intensity of this racing. In years past, Gateway, Phoenix, Iowa were not really good races because you could not pass. Tonight, I think it's challenging to pass, but I don't think it's impossible. And we've seen pretty solid racing around the field. And one thing I do like is that multiple grooves, especially here at Phoenix, are playing into this race.
Well, it's multiple grooves per corner even, and I think a lot of that comes down to the new tire model that works a lot more like the real cars would. It makes the grip make a lot more sense, but it also actually takes the margins for error down. It appears the cars look a little bit harder to control, which is also going to be a big factor in those road course races. But again, the tire update that came out about a month ago has been a big jump forward for these cars, and I think it's taken them from being a little more like slot cars really to being proper Indy cars.
For sure, as no one will hit pit lane this time. I don't think they're going to need to. Again, we only ran a couple laps after that restart, so tire wear shouldn't be that big of a concern. Again, once we get racing again, it'll be about 12 to 13 minutes worth of racing. So you've pretty much got what you've got, and you're not going to sacrifice track position at this point to play a differing strategy. You're just going to have to outrace the guy, and that's what racing's all about, Tom. Get up on that wheel and go get him.
And that brings me back to what I mentioned earlier. The 144 Chris Demeritt, he has a history of maintaining his resources pretty well. Does he have a mindset of tire saving right now? He really hasn't looked particularly urgent to get to the front. He's just making sure he's sticking within a second of the leader, whether it be Kraus early on or now Blocker. Blocker is absolutely quick. He put almost a second on Demeritt, but I do wonder how hard Demeritt's trying to make that not the case.
Well, talking about saving tires, I'm curious. Again, there's a lot of unknowns about this tire in particular. I'm curious if you can save enough tire to make a difference and overcome any sort of aero wash that you're experiencing. I would argue maybe not, but I do think it'll help keep the gap close and capitalize on any mistakes that we get. Also, keep in mind that we are just about 40 laps away from the end of this race, which means we are going to catch lap traffic again if we go green. So if I'm Christopher Demeritt, I wait until lap traffic gets there, and I try to figure out how to put Adam Blocker into a bad position. It's a chess match now at 185.
Exactly. It's twofold. If you have more tire and you're in the lap traffic, you've got a little more option. You've got a little more resources to play with. Lights out on the pace car, so I think we make it to at least lap 130 before heavy lap traffic becomes an issue, but these cautions are starting to come quicker and quicker.
Adam Blocker in the 74 has led the majority of the laps tonight. Demeritt behind him would like another crack at it and go 2 for 2 in the IndyCar 1909 150. Out of turn 4, 43 laps to go. Actually make that 42 as we take the green at Phoenix. Andrew Kinsella throttles back up as well. Andreas Eick, Chris Stouffer, the rest of the top 5 clean getaway from the front runners.
Wow, big breakaway for Blocker, and actually Kinsella has kept the pressure on Demeritt big time, so we've been giving Demeritt the benefit of the doubt, but now he's dropped significantly off of the back of Blocker and has a lot of pressure from behind for the first time this race.
It's about half a second. We've seen that gap grow as large as about a full second, but it's always come back down. Demeritt's maybe counting on that now, as next time by will be 40 laps to go. Ray Kingsbury in the 25 car, chasing Brian Carey. He's working his way towards the top 5. Dakota DiCienzo going high in turn 3. Chris Cahill on a recovery effort. All the way back at 20th. Not the direction he would like to have gone tonight, but that's how it's gone. He was involved in that last collision entering turn 1, but got away with minimal damage.
It looks like that car may not be nearly as healthy as he's got a big push on through turn 1 and starting to hold up the rest of the cars behind, but is still absolutely in this hunt just outside the top 10. I also noticed Hollabaugh was going for a position around the outside of 3 and 4, up inside the top 10. There he is on the back of Wilson Nito. Didn't pick the spot up, but he's still trying to continue that climb forward.
Yeah, Hollabaugh's had a really strong climb tonight and continues to be one of the fastest cars in the top 15. Can he get past Wilson Nito in the 80 car, who's trying to recover and get some sort of decent finish after the calamity of the opening lap last week at Homestead? Demeritt within 0.3 of a second of the race leader, was a half a tenth quicker last time by. And this is go time. If you're saving tires with 12 minutes of racing left, you better get up on that wheel and go get them.
I don't know. I would still be comfortable saving tires at this point, especially if I can keep this gap and save a little bit of tire. I think it's going to be tough. It's definitely going to have to be something he's rehearsed, but he has closed that gap right back down. I thought Blocker might start to drive away a bit, but it didn't happen, and that again makes me question how much is Demeritt going to have to work right now.
0.4 of a second is the gap between the leaders. Here's Osen Walsh in the 37 and Marshall Stanley in the 55. Stanley started this race back in 21st. He's up to 14th, a steady climb for him in that car. Tanner Watkins also didn't have a lot of pace at the beginning, but is now creeping his way towards the top 15, following Adam Crane in the 34 and Chad Simpson in the 42. Those two drivers running nose to tail right now. I'm curious where Adam Blocker is. He's exiting turn number 4 right now. Where are the lap cars? Passing the start-finish line, so already catching them here, Tom. It's going to get more crazy before it's not.
Yeah, and it just gets tougher and tougher because you catch 1, you catch 2, and then all of a sudden you catch 8 at a time. We saw that early on in this race. Sun is absolutely gone now, so the track conditions probably starting to cool maybe a little bit. But again, you get a little bit of a trickle and then just a landslide of lap traffic, and that's really where I think Demeritt's opportunity lies.
Keeping on his lap times, a little slower than Blocker, but still within half a second. Best lap of the day for him was about 200ths off of that 74. Whoa, car in the fence to their outside. I think that's Evan Adams in the 59. Demeritt goes to the bottom. He's got to run here, but can't fully get alongside. I think game on here, Tom.
Yeah, it looks like we're going. It's 20 laps to go next. 30 laps to go next time across the line. Whoa, Demeritt to the bottom. Gets a run along the inside, but the inside is not the preferred line through 3 and 4, I don't think. Does Blocker back out of it? He does.
Traffic.
It's a pick. They're going to go on either side. No.
I can't believe they did that and didn't crash.
That's unbelievable. Demeritt through to the lead. Oh, and a big... Oh, that was a really awkward moment between the lap traffic. Demeritt showed the nose, and the lap traffic turned in hard.
Tony Schowen cautions out as everyone scatters to miss him.
Does Demeritt have damage? That's the question. At the front of that 144 car, there was heavy contact between the two of them, but the car looks okay.
Oh, not what he wanted to see, that's for sure. Had the wrong camera at the wrong time. Here's a look at it once more.
So this was the high-risk move we thought. They made it work, but watch this dynamic between the leaders. He shows the nose early, commits to it, and the wing's going to pop off for a second, but that's just some programming stuff through the internet. Through the internet, and I think Demeritt might have got away with it, but again, just like not a great communication between those two cars. Blocker goes through regardless, so Demeritt loses the lead that he worked so hard to get. Just a heavy commitment down to the apex of one.
It's so hard, Tom. You got the heart pumping and the lungs breathing after that turn 4 move. You see the hole, you go for it. If you no longer go for a gap that exists, there's that old adage. But Tony Schowen, there is a gap out there on the racetrack on the timing screen, and it's because that car's loaded up on the hauler and going home. Demeritt actually is credited with the race lead.
Wow, and look at this. He stays out. So this time through, the pit lane is open. A majority of the top 10 take it, but Demeritt won last week on strategy, and he's rolling the dice at this point. So the question becomes, if the race goes green to the end with 28 laps to go, can the drivers pitting now make up the ground that they're going to lose here in the pit lane? This is a big gamble.
How many friends do you have is basically how many drivers stayed out with Demeritt. And by the looks of it, it's about a half a dozen.
I would say at least 10 cars or more.
Are they quality cars that will be able to stay up the front? I mean, look at Joe Branch, that he can stay up there. Chris Cahoe, he had some issues earlier, but he's good to go. I mean, you just need to have fast cars that will be able to defend for you, and you're going to be their best buddy now rooting for them. But, Tom, this is a gutsy call, but that's what won him Homestead last week. Maybe this is another strategy call here.
And the other driver that benefited from a big strategy call last week is that red and white car at the right side of your screen. Andreas Eick also stays out. So these drivers making a big gamble. Basically, they need the race to stay green till the end at this point. They really can't, I mean, if it goes to caution, they can pit with everybody else, but everybody else has the choice to make the gamble. Do I pit or not? So they're gambling for track position right now. Going to get it to start with, but it's really tense now. Both of us, I always joke, both of us just lean forward here in the booth.
Adam Blocker is going to restart this race in 9th if nothing changes. That's a lot of cars to pass, even with fresher tires. I mean, I know these other drivers have been out on the track for 28 laps, but the last 28 laps have not been all under green, Tom. They've been, we've had 2 cautions in that time. I don't think it's 28 laps worth of wear. It might be 10 laps worth of tire wear. I just don't know if 9th place is close enough to the front to take advantage of those new tires. I don't know, but it's with 25 laps to go at the restart, it's only going to be 6 or 7 minutes worth of racing. You better get up and go if you got fresh tires.
Well, and remember, every restart, it gets pretty single file for the top 5, but outside of the top 5, you run the risk of going side by side and losing a lot of time to the top cars. So Demeritt absolutely has the advantage on that one too, as does Eick. Everybody from Cahoe back, and Blocker's really in that spot. He's in danger of losing a lot of time just going side by side and making progress back towards the front. Yes, he might get towards the podium, but how far up the road is Demeritt by the time he gets there?
And will the lap traffic be a factor again? Mistake by Demeritt, I think, going into turn 1 there. Can't really fault Schowen for going for the apex when Demeritt wasn't there yet. That's always a challenging interaction with the closing rates we have here, but I think that last one was on Demeritt. So you have to think, I don't want to do that again, because you could draw the ire of the race control. So you want to dance delicately around traffic, but you also don't want to give up any sort of pace in the process. So it would be 25, maybe 26 laps to go at the restart. Demeritt, Eick, Branch, Kitchell, and Watkins, the rest of your top 5. Then Cahoe, DiCienzo, Aaron Roofs, Adam Blocker, and Andrew Kinsella on fresh Firestones at the back half of the top 10. 26 laps to go here at Phoenix, 26 miles until we crown our second winner of the season. Green flag back in the air. Demeritt fires off, and he's going to try to build as big of a gap as he can.
Yeah, he jumps it, gets away by a couple of car lengths over Eick. Eick's got company with Joe Branch in the Coca-Cola car, but there's Blocker. Blocker and Kinsella, the blue and green cars at the bottom of the track, are the 2 to watch. They were leading when they came through the pits. Now have to pick off about 9 cars as quickly as they possibly can. There's one down.
He goes through into 8th place. The next driver on the list is Dakota DiCienzo in the white car up the road. Kinsella is through as well. Demeritt across the line, 6/10 up the road from Andreas Ike. 25 laps to go here at Phoenix.
Doing what he needs to do to put about a second on the field so far. Blocker's only made up one. There's two now. They drop through turn 2. I think the top half of this field is really, really spread out, and that's bad news for Blocker in the 74.
With all the speed he can carry, though, on the outside, he's got momentum coming here for DiCienzo for 7th. Going to go to the bottom, and he'll be able to hold this line down here as DiCienzo runs wide, and Blocker's through to 7th now. Here comes Kinsella to follow.
Kinsella's following, and he's the defending race winner. If he can follow Blocker up through to the podium, he will be a contender. Now there's this big double file that we've seen every restart. Cars diving to the apron even. That's Nito trying to keep the car in position, but gets the over-under now.
That's a NASCAR move down there. They do that all the time and make speed, but you won't be able to do that with an Indy car here. Riley Thompson, Matt Hollaba. This is going to be 3 wide at the exit of turn 2. Is that going to work? Barely. Hollaba through.
Wow, the yellow car tried to follow through as well. I think that's Oisin Walsh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Chad Simpson, Marshall Stanley following this. Look at this battle up the road. Even there's Brian Carey in the 79. He was a top 5 driver earlier in the race, now battling for 11th with Ray Kingsbury, who's on the charge back forward. There's Chris Stover and Dakota DiCienzo. That is for 9th. Moves Stover through the spot. Big slide for Carey at the exit of turn 4. Kingsbury crosses over to the bottom.
Kingsbury was also well inside the top 10 before that final caution that broke the field up just a little bit. Meanwhile, Blocker up to 5th has ditched Kinsella, who's stuck in 8th. He's got a couple of cars between. Caho's one of them. Watkins is the other. And Watkins has been off cycle this entire race. He's been through the pit lane one more time than everybody else in the 24 car. But right now we're still riding with Kingsbury in 12th.
Now keep an eye on this battle here between DiCienzo and Brian Carey. Carey's through. Kingsbury will try to follow. And he will do so at the exit of turn 2. Now we'll move back forward to find those drivers you were just mentioning. Watkins falls to 6th, Kitchell to 4th, to 5th, Blocker to 4th place. Now it's Joe Branch next on the chopping block. 19 laps to go.
At this point, Demeritt really needs Blocker to get held up longer. Blocker wants to get through these cars as quickly as he has been, if not faster, but it's basically an entire front straightaways length between the two. Right now with track distance. Look at Blocker running the high line, trying to get a run, maybe an over-under onto Branch. You show the nose down into 1. Here he comes. There he goes. Pops out, takes the bottom.
Through turns 1 and 2, move Blocker to 3rd place. The mad dash to the front has begun. Next time by 17 laps to go. It's 3.7 to the race leader. Can he get there? He's running. Well, last time by 5 thousandths faster. He's going to have to be doing more than that here. But he's going to get back to 2nd at the very least. But can he get to the lead, though? That's going to be the tough part.
Well, and he's faster while passing cars. If you think back to Homestead, he was masterful at picking off single cars here and there. And he's done so from 8th all the way up to 3rd. Right now there, he just goes by on Ike on the ticker as well. So Blocker takes the bottom through 3 and 4, picks up 2nd spot, but it's a whole lot of empty pavement between himself and Demeritt, who's leading.
We'll watch that gap here at the top left of your screen. This is the gap we're watching. Is that 3.2. It's already come down a half a second in a lap. It's going to be very, very dicey for Demeritt to keep that gap at 3 seconds or above, and he's got lap traffic to contend with now. That is going to fall, and it's going to fall quickly. 15 laps to go.
20 seconds per lap. This is going to go really quick if it stays green. Kinsella around the outside, working his way back up towards the podium as well. He sits 5th, and then these big battles in the bottom half of the top 10.
3 seconds even between the front 2. Demeritt gets by one of those drivers. That, I believe, is Charles Ante in the 86. Evan Adams, who is that up on the high side? That is Evan Adams. He'll stay well out of the way and let Demeritt on through. 2.6 is the gap. It's falling quick here, Tom. 14 laps.
Falling really quick, and Demeritt really didn't get held up. He was let through by both of those lapped cars, so that's kind of a nightmare, especially if they let Blocker through too. Blocker is flying right now, almost matching his best lap of the race. Demeritt is almost a second off of his fast lap.
That's 0.4 quicker, 2.4. Come down a full second in 3 laps. Oh, Blocker still sideways. See, look at the closing rate here on Evan Adams. This is going to get really sketchy once we get into the full lap traffic, because the closing rate of Blocker on that traffic is going to be immense. Through turns 1 and 2 now. Demeritt's got some clear track for a moment. This is what he needs here, Tom, is just clear pavement.
Well, clear pavement if you have for a long time, but even that raw pace between the two of them, look at that's tumbling still, a 10th in the corner through 3 and 4 between the two. Demeritt, super high tension in the cockpit of the 144. Blocker pushing absolutely hard. He needs qualifying effort for the rest of the race. 11 laps to go. Do we stay green as we're starting to really encounter a lot of lap traffic through the bottom half of the top 10?
Charles Ante real close to getting the defense out of turn number 2. Here's a battle. Matt Holliba, Chris Cahill, Kingsbury, and more all in a line here with Tanner Watkins leading the charge. Here goes Kingsbury around the outside. This could be a caution. How dicey they're getting here. Splitting cars 3 wide in the background. Nito on the bottom.
Oh, Holliba sweeps around the outside, picks up 2 spots, up to 12th now, who was back in 14th for a moment. Nito drops there, and Holliba's trying to make moves again. The white and green car, high side this time.
Nowhere to
Big
go, though.
momentum, but a lot of push up there as well. He's into the marbles almost at this point in this late stage of the race. 9 laps to go, 1.6 seconds between the leaders.
We'll keep an eye on that gap. Charles Ante on the outside, going to be real slow on exit. Everybody slicing and dicing back here for top 10 positions. Cahill in front in that white and black car is 10th place. Holliba wants 11th, has to fight it with Tanner Watkins.
Ooh, and this is the risky spot. Exiting turn 4 side by side really doesn't work for the car on the bottom, but Holliba keeps it there and now dives for the apex of 1. Black car on the high side. Cahill, I think. No, Watkins trying to keep it there, but now Holliba takes the position. Does Malechka go through as well?
Gonna give it a go. Can't fit. Kinsella and Branch, this is for 4th. Make that pass complete. Notably, Demeritt last time was 3/10 better than Blocker, so Blocker got held up or slowed down or something. Gap is, oh, does he have damage maybe? 2 seconds back. Trying to see if he's been in the fence at all. I don't see any damage, but he has lost a little bit of pace.
Well, remember, it's possible Demeritt saved a little bit more than Blocker did. Blocker's been pushing super hard. We've seen tire wear be kind of at a premium tonight. Demeritt had the opportunity to save just a bit and maybe just turn the wick up now as he's starting to lap 10ths faster than he had been.
5 laps to go, 5 miles left at Phoenix Raceway for the IndyCar 1909 150. Andreas Eich in the 76 still holds on to 3rd. Wilson Nito, Tanner Watkins. If we get a caution here, this could spell the end of the race, so hoping that all this goes clean and green to the end.
Nito with a big move. He's picked up a couple spots on those last 2 laps as we looked away, and he's on the bottom through turn 1, picks up the spot over Malechka.
Watkins, I believe, in the 24.
Yes.
Malechka behind him. Ryan Carey side by side with Kingsbury for 8th. The Kingsburys have been battling forward all night long to try to grab a top 10. One of them might be in a good position to do just that. That would be Ray in 9th place, but he would like 8th place away. That is a little close for comfort.
Barely room for paper between the 2 of them, but Kingsbury picks that coveted high line through 3 and 4, gets the slingshot around the outside, will lead across the line, but doesn't quite close the gap. Now does so as he slams the door down into turn 1. Demeritt still at the front. There he is, black, yellow, and blue.
Well, we only have 2 miles left here, but there is lap traffic in the way. 2 laps to go here from Phoenix. Blocker is 1.3 back with a car in between. 1 second is all it is. Christopher Demeritt last week at home said it was a strategy call that won him. The caution flag is out. Crash at the exit of turn number 4. It's a big one. Everybody scatters. Whoa, car up, airborne, tumbling over the top.
Whoa, and Demeritt came up on that one in a really hairy spot. Look at him pinned down at the bottom, works his way through. Actually, Blocker goes through, but we'll obviously have to let him back through as the caution was already out.
Yeah, white flag is out, so this will be the end of the race. And Christopher Demeritt thankfully didn't have to drive through it. But wow, crash. We'll go back and look at that after the race is over here, but that was very close.
That was very close. He came up on that really quick. And again, I mean, you're lapping at 180 miles an hour. Coming to a stop takes a lot longer than you think. You saw both front tires locked up as Demeritt went through that incident. And if you actually took note of the cars that were crashing, it was the battle for about 10th to 15th that we were watching that was so intense. A number of those cars were involved in that incident, so that one went south pretty quickly.
Adam Blocker has taken the lead away. Did these positions swap here at the checkers? We'll have to go back and see what happened at the time of caution. This is a big deal here, Tom. As we come out of turn 4, results unofficial here, but Adam Blocker is out in front of Christopher Demeritt as we cross the line. The race is officially over, but Blocker is the first one across the line. Did Demeritt slow for the caution and Blocker swing around the outside with nothing to lose? That could have swapped those positions.
I know for a fact that the caution came out before Blocker went past Demeritt on our screen.
Well, let's have to.
Demeritt had to come to a stop at the bottom of the pit wall, almost at pit entry, to make sure that he didn't get collected in that incident. But again, that was well after the caution was displayed on our monitors. There's the moment that Blocker finally goes through. So that's a big question mark for me.
So we're going to have to ride on board here with Christopher Demeritt, and let's see at the time of caution. Caution flag is out here.
Yes.
So where is Adam Blocker?
Well behind.
Well behind. So how did Blocker get ahead of Demeritt?
So Demeritt goes low, tries to avoid the incident, but check how many cars are here. He comes to almost a full stop. Blockers around the outside where there's nothing to impede him. He takes the position and has scored the leader across the start-finish line, but technically the caution had been out for almost a half a lap at that point. So I don't know how the programming in iRacing works for this scenario, but I know that Christopher Demeritt should be winning this race.
Yeah, again, caution's been out for a long time. Demeritt should be credited with the race win. I don't see how, unless it's scored, because it took Demeritt so long to get back ahead, it could have swapped those positions because but it's hard to. If I'm race control, I'd be manually overriding that one, Tom. That's a frustrating situation. Let's go back and find out what caused that collision to happen. Was AJ Musselman the one that went tumbling?
Yeah, he was a later addition. I think it was actually Watkins who was involved in the initial hit, and a number of those other cars that were battling hard for that 12th spot or so. Here's the incident.
Oh, he gets hit from behind. Right here, he's going to get basically bulldozed.
Ooh, I think
man!
I think that's Usheen
Walsh
that got into the back of him at the apex of 3-4. Maybe a lot of tire wear on the right front.
Yeah,
see him already low, and a ton of momentum from behind for Usheen, and collects him from behind, and then at that point, it's just a freight train of cars coming into the incident.
Yeah, watch the scale of this, though. This is an absolutely enormous impact. Huge hit for. I believe that is blanking here. Marshall Stanley's 55, and then watch, in comes Musselman and just slams into the parked cars and goes for a wild tumble down the front straightaway. There's another look at that.
Might not have even seen the second car. Looks like he's starting to slow down, sees the incident early enough, tries to go high around the outside of Watkins, and then goes into an Olympic gymnast tumble over the pit wall down the pit lane.
Wow, that is something, I'll say.
Doesn't quite stick the landing. Lose points for that one.
Yeah, for sure. Here's a look at your race results. I'm not really sure what to think of this one here, Tom. I'm not sure. I would assume that the results as they stand in iRacing are the results, but I cannot confirm that at this point. Blocker scored in front of Christopher Demeritt, then Andreas Eich is third, Andrew Kinsella, Joe Branch, Mike Kitchell, Christopher, Kingsbury, Carey, and Cahoe, your top 10.
Yeah, again, I put a big question mark on that one, but there's Holobus in 11th place. Wilson Nito recovers from the DNF at the beginning of the season for a 12th, close to top 10. Malechka in 13th. Thompson Stanley round out the top 15. And then a number of those cars that were involved in the incident, check it out, it's even Tanner Watkins scored 17th, despite the fact that he was wrecked in turn 4, coming to that white flag.
Moving on to page number 3, there's Dan Ench. Then a lot of the drivers that were involved in that last lap collision, all torn up at the exit at turn number 4. Adam Dock with a crash in turn number 1. That's what caused him to be out of this race 46 laps prior to the end. Of course, the last page, Philip Kraus, the 19, and Henry Bennett tangling in turn number 1. I'm curious to see what the results are on that after an investigation is performed. And that collision down in turn number 1 looked like foul play there to me, but we'll see what the deal is at the end of the day. So moving on once more to your race results, showing at the top of the screen now as we wait for our drivers to join us here tonight. Let's see. I think Demeritt is credited with second place because he slowed way down. I don't know if that should stand, though, Tom. So we're going to wait here until that's decided and official. I'm going to wait to hear from the administrators.
Yeah, I'll bite my tongue on my opinion for that one as well, as we are understanding that it's basically within the programming of the simulator that if a car is under a certain mile an hour, it's considered to have been in the accident. And because Demeritt had to come to a stop to avoid so many of those cars that were wrecking, it labeled him as part of the wreck and allowed Blocker to be scored the lead.
Yeah, it's just one of those situations where he had to slow down to avoid the crash.
Correct.
So in my mind, the 144
it's an easy
car
call
won that
for me,
race.
but again, I'm not neither of us are officials,
No.
so we get to see what the officials choose
You get our
to
opinion.
do.
You don't get the facts.
Exactly. We get the little asterisk next to what we say, but again, either way, both cars a great championship effort, especially Demeritt with possibly back-to-back wins to start this whole thing out, but either way, a first and second is still a great start to a championship season. So is Andreas Eich, who will be third no matter what. He's third on the board right there. That's 2 P3s to start the championship off, and that's a heck of a start as well.
All right, so we're iRacing made the call that Chris slowed down to avoid the wreck and voided his position. The administrators are going to discuss any post-race changes to change that call. My guess is that they will, But in the meantime, we got to get this broadcast out of the way. Let's talk to our top 3 regardless, and we'll update you on Facebook later in the evening should things change. But in the meantime, we'll get them all in here and have a little chat real quick before we send them off for the rest of the night. So it looks like we've got Chris Demeritt here. Andrew Kinsella has also joined us. Let's talk to Andrew first. Andrew Kinsella joining us now. 4th place tonight. A wild way to end this one with a big crash out of turn number 4. A top 5, though, for you as the defending race winner. Andrew, take us through the night and the challenges of the lap traffic and the cautions.
Yeah, it was a fun race, but it was a challenging race. Passing's really difficult here, but I think I was able to get through the cars fairly well. I think I passed a few cars every stint, and yeah, we made the wrong call there at the end. We thought we could get we had enough usage on those tires that would be worth pitting, but Adam made it back. I didn't quite make it back. I didn't get any cooperation with the guys who were on the tires, but I mean, they were fighting for positions too, so what can you do? But good race to everyone. Especially Andreas. He was running really well all race, and definitely top for his team, so good to see team talent and Andreas at the front. Yeah, it was a good battle.
Well, next week we head to our first road race. That'll be at Barber Motorsports Park. Your thoughts on Barber, how that's going to race, and what the tire strategy might be like there next week? That's a big unknown for a lot of people.
I think at Barber the tires are going to depend a lot on your setup. If you can keep the rears under you, especially out of the Charlotte's Web, the hairpin corner there, I think the Reds will probably be the fastest. But yeah, if you're too aggressive on the rake, or if you're doing too much with the rears, it's a risk. So I think it'll make for a very interesting race, and Barber's always a fun track to drive. So I think it'll be fun.
All right, Andrew. Hey, thanks for talking to us and joining us. We'll see you next week at Barber.
Yeah, then. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. Moving on now to Chris Demeritt, scored unofficially in 2nd place for now. Chris, I think we're all sort of waiting to see if there'll be any changes, but first of all, let's just put the finish aside for a second. Talk about, regardless of the outcome, tonight was an extraordinarily strong night. The win last week at Homestead propelled you forward here tonight. Either a 2nd or a 1st. It's all going to be good in the name of points. Your thoughts on the night and heading next week to Barber?
Yeah, we just rolled out with a really strong car this week. I mean, pretty much all the credit goes to Brandon Trino. He really worked hard on our short oval package, and I mean, he worked really hard on the Homestead package too. To be honest, I was looking for pole during qualifying, and I made a few mistakes. I think Phil made I'm sure Phil could have gone faster too, so it's just one of those things where who makes the least mistakes. And then, I mean, it's so hard to pass here, and I was so close to Phil, and I was just hoping I could get by. But I mean, yeah, between Phil, Adam, and I, it was a great race, and I mean, any 3 of us, whatever order we ended up with, I was going to be happy with. I mean, 1st or 2nd at the end there, it was still a good race in my mind. I have a very strong opinion of which way it should land, but either way, it was a good night.
Hey Chris, Tom O'Gorman here in the booth. We've obviously talked about that as well, but my big question is, how much urgency was there in that first 110 laps or so for you to be in the position you were in, and what led to the decision to stay out when that final caution came out and gamble that the rest of the race would go green?
There wasn't too much urgency in the first 100 laps. It was more of just kind of keeping up with Phil, and especially through traffic. It was interesting because usually you would push at the beginning of the stint when your tires are new, but it's pretty on edge right at the beginning, so kind of have to back off and then kind of drive back up. So really just making moves for traffic, really. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
It's just what led to the decision to stay out. It's kind of the
Right.
second week we've seen the strategy get you to the top.
Yeah, there was fortunately we had that other caution before that, because I actually had no idea how slightly worn tires would react here, and so I could see that there wasn't much pace drop off after, you know, like putting what was it, like 10 laps on the tires or something. It seemed all of the time fall off seemed to be mostly related to temperature instead of wear, so when you cool the tires back down on the caution, you get most of the time back. So I knew that even if I had, you know, a handful of cars like I did, that would be enough. And then Adam would have to pass me again, which is a whole. He'll have the problem that I had the entire race. So it seemed like a safe call as long as I didn't have front wing damage from Tony there. And I mean, we apologized to each other, but I'll apologize to him again for that because I made a move under the assumption that I would met the closing rate because he was trying to let us by, but got into him instead.
Christopher Demeritt, unofficially second for now. We'll talk to you hopefully next week as a two-time race winner, but we'll let the administrators decide that. Best of luck to you in this outcome, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, see ya.
We'll see ya. And we'll talk now with Adam Blocker, who unofficially is scored as the race winner. Adam, a lot of chaos flying around right now about the results of that race, so let's put the results aside for a second and just talk about the race, the 149 laps leading up to that white flag. Either way, it's going to be a good night for you, and coming off of a second last week at a Homestead, this is a great start to the season. Is it about points right now, or racking up as many wins as you can get?
I mean, it's just all about finishing in the top few positions. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Frank just told me that I think they're going to rule that Chris won and I finished second, which, you know, is what it is. I think, yeah, I mean, we were in a good position. Unfortunately, qualified a little bit, not as good as I would have liked, P6, but yeah, I made some moves early and got up into the top three. Once I got past Andreas, I kind of knew it was going to be a race between me, Phil, and Chris. And then, yeah, I mean, Phil ran over the back of Henry in a straight line, so I kind of took him out. And yeah, then it was between me and Chris, and I passed him on the pit lane under yellow during pit stop cycle, and the only reason he passed me back under green was because I was trying to save fuel, because the spot we were in with the yellow at like 55 to go or whatever was that we had to pit for fuel, or sorry, we had to save fuel to make it, and it's a lot harder to save fuel when you're in clean air. And yeah, I just wasn't really hitting my numbers, so if it was going green, I would have been in trouble. So he passed me because of that, and then of course then we got a yellow, so then I was like, well, I just got to do whatever the opposite of what he does, and I took tires, and it wasn't a bad call. I mean, I got back up to second anyway, so yeah, and it was pretty easy to pass people on fresh tires. So.
Well, Adam, the official ruling has just been made that Christopher Demeritt will stand as the race winner. You'll come home in second tonight, 2 in a row. So obviously not maybe the result you were looking for, but always next week at Barber Motorsports Park to pick up your first win of the season. Road courses are maybe where you've got that advantage over Demeritt. Your thoughts on Barber and how you think you'll do out there?
Yeah, if I was able to make it, I would definitely think I could win that race. But yeah, unfortunately, I have real life commitments, so I'm going to miss that one. But yeah, definitely looking forward to road courses this year. I think that'll be key to the championship. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Chris gets an EOL for his contact with Tony as well. So hopefully that's the case. But yeah.
All right, Adam. Hey, thanks for talking to us. Congratulations, another top 2 run for you. We'll see you in a couple weeks at our next round number 4 of the season. Adam, thanks for talking. We'll see you later.
See ya.
All right, well, that was crazy. We finally have an official result, Tom, and it, of course, is Christopher Demeritt's position at the time of caution will stand. Personally, I'm in favor of that decision, but your thoughts on that before we head out for the night?
Well, the biggest thing that stands out to me is I think it's fascinating. We've talked about how many moving parts there are to this championship, not only because it's a normal race championship, but we've thrown a lot of new variables in, and regardless of that, we've had 2 of the same podiums both times through, with Demeritt, Blocker, and Ike taking the podium in the first 2 rounds. So I think the cream is really rising to the top regardless of what's thrown at them, but I do think next week will be the biggest tell as we go to our first of 5 road courses on the schedule. Again, 11 ovals, but we're going to shake things up bigger than these first 2 rounds for sure.
Yeah, the road course at Barber Motorsports Park, our first time on 2 different tire compounds. We'll see you in 1 week on January 31st for round number 3 of the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series. Thanks again to IndyCar1909 for sponsoring this race. Find IndyCar news and IES race summaries at IndyCar1909.com. I'm Kyle Heyer with Tom O'Gorman. We'll see you next time on Sim TV next Sunday for the Indy Elite Series round number 3.